Hey, what's up guys? It's been a few weeks, a little longer than I was hoping for, but I'm here today. We're gonna do part 3 of the Mead video finally. Tucked in this back little corner here so I can film this nicely and not get interrupted. So we're gonna do a few things today. The first thing we're gonna do, we're gonna take a sample of this guy and we're gonna check out hydrometer. I'm gonna talk about ABV and gravity and all that stuff that I mentioned in the last video. Let's open her up. That guy set it aside. All right. Very viney, vinous smelling so far. And then bring this towards the camera. Hopefully you can see that little brown ring around the top there. That is a really, really common sign of fermentation. Fermentation being finished. So let's wipe up this mess real quick. So that's a really common sign. You can open up any kind of container, beer, wine, cider, mead, whatever. You're always gonna see a ring of crud that's left over from fermentation. So right away, that tells me that it probably fermented. That and the liquid level is always a little bit below. So let's take a sample. Got a nice big thief here. I'm gonna rotate it so I can get as much at once. With these, you just put your thumb at the end. So this will take me a few. I don't really want to just pour this right now, but I'll try to go as quickly as I can. Get a little bit of yeast off the bottom there. And so I'll just talk while I pull a sample here. Earlier I mentioned that we were going to figure out, we were backtrack the alcohol percentage we created with this. And so when you're using any kind of sugar, you can accurately say that you're going to get a certain amount of extract based on the amount of sugar you're using. And what that's referred to is points per pound per gallon. And you'll see, or ppg. And you'll see the same thing used in beer pretty often. But typically it's referred to as potential extract with beer, because with beer, a lot of your process will actually dictate how much sugar you get out of that. When we're using sugar or honey, we basically know A goes in, A comes out. Because we're not really steeping it or rinsing it or any of that stuff. So honey has an average of 35 ppg, so points per pound per gallon. So that means that if you were to use 1 pound of honey and 1 gallon of water, you would have a gravity of 1.035. Okay, so in our particular batch here, we did just under 3 pounds of honey. It was a 46-ounce jar, which is 2.875. I did the math real quick here. And if we were to calculate, so 2.875 multiplied by 35, which would give us 100, just over 100 points. And we only have 1 gallon, so we don't divide it by anything. So if I were to backtrack this, I can pretty accurately say that we started with a 1.100 mead at the very beginning. Honey is a little variable depending on the source, depending on the how it's extracted and all that. So that's why honey can vary. Sugar is almost always the exact same number, you know, minus brown sugar, which adds extra weight and stuff like that. So we started at 1.1000, and I'm gonna float our hydrometer in there now, and we are all the way fermented out dry. So I'm gonna bring this up closer to the camera and not spill any this time, right? Okay, so you can see how only a teeny bit of the hydrometer is actually floating up at the top still. And the actual measurement on my end here looks like 0.98. So just below 1. So in that case, we fermented out everything. There's no residual sugar here at all, left at all. And if that's the case, we can use the approximate potential alcohol scale on here to figure that out. So we started at 1 right there. We rotate this around, and that would give us about a 13%, kind of see it right there, on the potential alcohol scale. So we've got roughly here about a 13.25 to a 13.5% mead. A little bit of math right there, cool, right? So that part's done. Looks really pretty, but you'll also notice it's a little bit cloudy. And so we've got something for that today too. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna add some pectic enzyme. And we're also gonna add a little bit of dry hops. I decided I would go ahead and do it. So I've got a 1/2 ounce of Hallertau Mittelfruh. It's a really nice, noble German hop, low alpha, nice light floral. It's one of my favorite hops for beer brewing. And I didn't want something to clash with the other flavors. So some recipes for Vikings Blood do use hops. I decided I'm gonna do it too. Okay, so this guy was, actually we're gonna save this, I wanna taste it. I'm gonna put that aside. So, what we're gonna do now though, is we're gonna transfer this mead into a nice clean, fresh 1 gallon glass jug, so we can let this age a little bit longer. So I've got a little bit of star stain in here. Shook it up earlier, shaking up a little bit more now. Let's pour that in there. And we're gonna use a siphon. But in order to make the siphon work, I need to elevate this a little bit. So down below here, I've got this pot, just so I can pick it up. Now, I've got a few coasters, because we're going to elevate and pitch this up towards the side. That way that my siphon can go down here in the corner and get as much of the liquid out as possible. Alright, so auto siphon, don't want to spray sanitizer everywhere. I do want a little bit more come out of there. Cool. Let's do that and get the sanitizer out of that. You don't need any extra sanitizer. Down. Cool. So, the way an auto siphon works is that there's a gasket right here. There's an inner racking cane, and this gasket helps to pull liquid into the main tube here. And then when I push down, it's gonna force it up through the center hose. And then once we get enough in here, we can actually start a siphon and just literally, by gravity, it's gonna come out of here and come down our hose and into our new container. So let's put that right there. And then this is a little unwieldy, so I have a racking cane clip to help me get this nice and secure without moving too much, because I don't want this to move around a lot. Okay, let's put it like that. Like that. Okay. Clip's gonna help us a little bit here, not a ton, but it's helping. Let's get a clean, sanitary. That's why it's always good to be working in a place with a cleanable floor. Got a hose here. Don't worry about this little fitting. I use it for beer, but it's gonna put a little weight on there and make it easier. Okay. So down into the bottom. We're gonna put this on here. And that's like the perfect distance. So now what I'm gonna do, hopefully this is still in frame. It's a little high. I apologize. We're gonna pull up. And down. And we need to do a little bit more. Sometimes you gotta do a couple of pumps to get it going. Cool. Let's do one more. So, right here, I was letting a little bit of air in where the hose attaches to the racking cane. So I'm just gonna sit here and hold this really snugly until it's all finished. Cool. That looks such a pretty pink color. Let's go. Yeah, all right. I will be right back with a clamp for this hose because it's annoying me. All right, I'm back. We got a clamp up at the top of the racking cane now. This is why I really prefer containers with spigots, but it's still a good idea to use. There we go. It's still a great idea to use an auto siphon even with these little issues. I'm gonna edit this as little as possible so you see my frustrations too. But what we're trying to do really is we wanna leave the yeast that's still in here, I wanna leave that behind. I don't want to bring the yeast over. There, it's filling. I just wanna take the liquid. So by doing this, instead of pouring, because obviously if I had just gone and poured this, we would have been done like a couple minutes ago, right? So we're being as gentle as we can. We're trying to leave the yeast behind. We want to get our nice clean liquid into this container. Cool. So that's going. Siphon's actually set up now. Where the liquid is continuously flowing. My issue earlier was not having a clamp between my hose and my racking can. As you can see, because I'm not fighting with this anymore. Cool. And in terms of volume, looks pretty good. You can kind of still see there's a little bit of liquid left, but I'm working there. We're getting close to the top here on our jug. So while that's finishing up, we're getting close there. I have a small muslin bag, and like I said earlier, almost done. I'm gonna tilt this. I want to make sure I get the last little bit of liquid in there. Go, 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 go. I'm not gonna have room for hops. Sweet, look at that. All right, just a teeny bit over. Let's not make a mess when we're doing this. Okay, cool. That's why it's good to have a rag nearby and to be doing this in a well-ventilated area, cleanable area. Okay. Awesome. All right, gang, we're back. Clean up my mess a little bit here. We're gonna do just our last two things, and then we're gonna set this guy aside for another week or so. In the final video, I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna show you how we'll bottle this. Cool. So I mentioned that I do wanna add some hops, and while I collected a very perfect amount of liquid in here, I'm gonna have to displace a little bit of this. So, might as well try some, right? Got a glass. I'm just gonna pour aside a little bit out of here. Probably enough. And now, let's do this part first. Half ounce of the Hallertau Mittelfruh. Sanitized muslin disposable style bag. I would not recommend just throwing your hops in here without a bag. Whole cone hops, you can. Pellets, especially not. You will regret it later. So, space this out. Let's get that in. Perfect. There it goes. Okay. And then I started to mention earlier that there's a certain level of cloudiness to this. And while a little bit of that cloudiness is from there's still suspended yeast in here, a large hunk of that cloudiness is from pectin, from the blackberries that I put in our secondary here, which is what makes our jams really nice and jelly-like and firm and spreadable, but it also adds sort of a cloudy character to your wines and mead cider. That's why when you'll see fresh pressed cider, how cloudy it is compared to, say, like apple juice, that's from the pectin from the skins of the apple. So it's not, you know, not a terrible thing, but we can fix that. So what I've got here is a liquid pectic enzyme. It's this very concentrated stuff. Typically you only need like a few drops per gallon, so I'm gonna put about 5 drops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I did 6, 7. Doesn't really matter if you go a little bit over. Now they're talking about it, you know what, I'm gonna go to 10. 8, 9, 10. So what this is, it's a natural enzyme that's gonna help to break down the pectin. It doesn't work instantaneously, it's gonna take a few days. But let's put a, let's see, so now that I've got a little bit of space, I'm gonna take from our hydrometer sample earlier that I sanitized this before the video. I'm just gonna top off right to the tip there. That way we're reducing the total amount of oxygen, only a very small headspace. It gives me a little bit of room when I go to siphon this later. Should put an airlock. Even though the primary fermentation is pretty much finished, we still want to use an airlock because I can even see a little bit of gas escaping there. Adding those hops are going to create a little bit of a nucleation point. Let's make this up now. And there's still some things that are going on. So I wouldn't cap this off, because if you cap it off, there could still be some pressure. It could pop on you. So always have an airlock, even for secondary, because it's there for a reason. Cool. So that's sitting in there. The pectic enzyme is going to work its way into the mead, and over the next few days, it'll start to make this really clear. As this settles, we're going to see a teeny bit of sediment at the very bottom of the container after maybe like a week or so. And when I go to bottle, we're going to do a really similar thing with this. I'm just going to have a bottling wand on the end of the hose instead of just an empty hose like this. All right, so through all that, I do have some here. Should probably try it, right? Smells good. Smells bright, very like kind of strawberry. I mean, I know I put blackberries in here, but it reminds me kind of strawberry right off the bat. Berry note. Oh, it's interesting. Hibiscus adds this really nice, like herbal. Oh, now it's coming through. I really like Jamaica at taco shops, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And this immediately reminds me of that, but then it like goes into this nice cherry sort of fruit flavor and a nice little alcohol warmth. It's actually not, it's a little hot. I don't say hot. You can feel the alcohol for sure, but this is only a few weeks old. It's definitely not harsh by any means, for considering this is a 13% beverage that's about a month old. Like, we could be drinking this, but it'll get a lot better once we set this guy aside in some bottles, let it age a little longer. Cool. So, sorry it took me a little bit longer to get back to this than I wanted to, but that was round 3. Round 4, we're gonna come back in a couple of weeks once this is cleared and settled, and I'll show you guys how to do the bottling part. Thanks for watching, have a great day.